Alrighty, so World War II, Part 2. The similarities between Mussolini and Hitler. We want to make sure that we've got this entire list down, especially the whole nationalism, anti-Semitism, collection of the identity, the individual person, because again, nationalism and we are all one, that idea kind of takes over. Both are going to use totalitarian means in order to gain power, and make sure you take note of the specifics that go along with the ways they use to gain that power. Terror, intimidation, secret police, whether it's the Gestapo in Germany or it's Mussolini's private dudes. They're all both leaders are going to use a secret police to enforce the will so that it looks like everybody's going along with everything and that everything's okay and what the government says goes, because they're abolishing, they're squashing out, they're getting rid of all the people who are saying anything otherwise. Censorship and, of course, propaganda. We talked a little bit about propaganda with the First World War. It is back hot and heavy in the Second World War, and especially with the regimes, and we're going to see some examples of propaganda, especially Hitler's propaganda, later in the video. So, since we're talking about totalitarian, this slide gives you a specific definition of it's a government where all state, where the state has and the government has all of the power. It can be one person, it can be an entire party. They're going to promise liberty, but they're going to abolish freedoms like freedom of the press, etc. Going back to that whole censorship idea. There's a police state, going back to the idea that they've got that secret police that's running around making sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. Propaganda is going to be telling everybody that everything is great. And like we said earlier on a previous slide, essentially, where democracy isn't working, these regimes typically crop up and they tend to take over because they've got a promise of a better future, a better way of doing things. But like I said earlier, United States folks wouldn't necessarily be keen on a government that abolishes those freedoms and has one person in charge, etc. We have our triangle of fascists up here in the first part of the slide: Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco from Spain. And then, of course, we also say that Communist Lenin and Stalin are both also, or all five of these people, have totalitarian governments in common. Both communist and fascist leaders can be totalitarian rulers. Here are your differences in how the two came to power. Mussolini was the winner, World War I. Okay, but he doesn't have any land that he's given. After World War I, they didn't gain anything during the Treaty of Versailles, and so again, Mussolini's going to be a little bit, he's going to have his panties in a twist about that one. There's heavy taxes that have to be paid for during an economy that was hurt by the war, so that's going to lead to lots of economic problems, high inflation because of lack of goods. So they're again in that less than or a less than exciting economic situation. They're a little bit less racist and anti-Semitic than Germany. Again, that's still a key component, at least the racism part is key idea of fascism, but they won't necessarily be anti-Semitic until Hitler steps in and basically takes control, and Mussolini is little more than a puppet. That won't kick in until later, where Hitler orders him to, again, get rid of the Jews and send the Jews to him so that he can get rid of them in the final solution. Fascism or Nazism under Hitler. They were the losers in World War I, so obviously angry at the land loss. They had to pay all those reparations. We know that the economy was in pitiful shape, and as you read in the crash course, $1 equaled 4 trillion Deutschmarks, so they're having some issues with their money. And again, more racist, more anti-Semitic It is also important to note here that it wasn't just necessarily the Jewish community that was singled out and sent to concentration camps. If you were a vagabond or a homeless person, if you were a gypsy, if you were someone from, well, and those are usually the Romanians, homosexuals, anybody that was deemed an undesirable, someone that was outside the norms of society, could have also been sent to a concentration camp. If you take a look, if you have time, take a look at a poster behind my desk. There is, and I'll try to move it out so you can see it a little bit better and have access to it. There's a set of symbols down at the bottom of the poster by the Rabbi Niemöller that talks about all the different, it talks about, first they came for the so-and-sos and I didn't speak up. It's that quote. If you look at the bottom of that poster, there are different symbols that other folks had to wear and identify themselves with under the Nazi regime. So it was more than just the Jews, although hands down we nobody's debating or trying to say that they didn't get the short end of the stick on that situation. Appeasement. Appeasement is a huge vocabulary term in this section. It's seen on some notes that I gave you. It's in your crash course. It's in your reading. It's in these notes with a big star next to it. And we're going to do some cartoons, like the one you see in the corner there. We're going to do some cartoons talking about appeasement and a couple assignments where they talk about appeasement and pressure. So we need to make sure that we understand what appeasement is. And essentially, if you've ever given somebody something to make them shut up or quit doing something you didn't like, you gave them something to make them do something you wanted to do. That is essentially appeasement. Parents, if you've ever bugged your parents until they gave you what you wanted, that is essentially your parents appeasing you to get you to stop driving them nuts or driving them crazy. It's very powerful. You have to be extremely strong to resist such temptations. And sometimes it's just easier to give in rather than to fight a war about it. Again, using metaphors here, although that they will become true in this situation. The nations of Europe are going to ignore Hitler's buildup. We've talked about how he goes against the Treaty of Versailles, and he starts rebuilding his army, and he starts rebuilding the navy, and he starts building up the air force, because essentially the world is not ready. They're scared of having another war. They don't think he's that much of a threat. Germany is going to take back the Rhineland, that is the territory in between France and Germany along the Rhine River. The part that was demilitarized and occupied by the Allies after World War I. He's going to reoccupy it and basically take it back over with force, so the Allies go away. They get out of the Rhineland. He's going to start making alliances, whether it be with Spain, or in this case, 1937, the alliance with Japan. Then he's going to start annexing territory. Now, what isn't mentioned on this list is that he does take back the Alsace-Lorraine. Shocker, I know. He annexes it. The word annex is the word you had to fill in your blanks because it's just a better way. It's a nicer term, a nicer sounding word than took back. He basically says this is a part of ours now, and nobody offers resistance. He takes back Austria, or the Anschluss, as sometimes it's referred to. And he's going to threaten something called the Sudetenland, which is a part of Western Czechoslovakia, the part that's closest to Germany, because there are a lot of German-speaking people. Again, refer back to the previous video where we talked about nationalism, wanting to put all of the same culture of people within one political border. So this is going to be his justification, that I have to get all the Germans back in one territory again. And this is all done under the concept of Lebensraum. So let's figure out what the heck that means. Leben or Lebensraum is this idea of expansion of territory. Essentially, there's a law of nature that says all healthy and vigorous peoples of superior races should displace the inferior races, especially if the people of a superior race are facing overpopulation in their given territories. So again, that idea of we're bigger, we're better, we're stronger, social Darwinism, we can go out and just take over these territories. especially if we're having a territorial crunch in our neck of the woods anyway. So Lebensraum here could possibly be on a test or a quiz. So with all this appeasement going on, the world does finally kind of snap awake and think, maybe we ought to be doing something about this. So by 1938, and this is very important that you pay attention to the Munich Conference. It is always, always, always on a test, the Bay test. The Munich Conference of 1938, Hitler, Mussolini, and Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of England, are all going to get together at Munich in order to discuss the territory that's been taken over and just how much more does Hitler plan on taking. And so during this Munich conference, Hitler, of course, promises to be a good boy. I'm not going to take any more territory. I promise I'm done. If you'll just give me what I've got, let's not get excited about it. So he's given the Sudetenland without the consent of of Czechoslovakia. So he takes that western part of the Czechoslovakian territory, and there is a map of Czechoslovakia down here. Okay, he takes that western part, it's the darkened part, I believe, of Czechoslovakia, and that becomes the Sudetenland. That becomes part of Germany. He keeps Austria. He keeps the Alsace-Lorraine. They are not bringing up the whole idea that he had increased his military again despite the Treaty of Versailles. And essentially it's just a conference where they're all going to get together and say, are you done now? Because if not, we're really going to have to do something about this. And this is known in the Munich Conference. The expansion is going to stop for one whole year, and Hitler is then going to take back all of Czechoslovakia. And the thing that always gets brought up on the test is the fact that this is essentially the epic failure of Neville Chamberlain. He's going to go back to Great Britain and announce that he's done this wonderful thing, and he even announces, and this is a very specific quote that usually is brought up in terms of him, he announces that we have peace in our time. End quote. Quote unquote. Peace in our time. I would write that out to the side of your notes right now if I were you. So the whole world thinks that Neville Chamberlain has solved it, that the Munich Conference is over. We're going to have this big peace in our time. And then one whole year later, the entirety of Czechoslovakia is taken over by Hitler. So it is very obvious that Neville Chamberlain is ineffective as a leader, and he's going to be replaced. So epic fail of Neville Chamberlain at the Munich Conference, 1938, which again is just more appeasement on top of appeasement, and he proclaims peace in our time. Turns out it's only peace for another year. In your handouts that you received from me this week, this will be a notebook page, the Hitler vocab worksheet. Make sure that you read those 4 terms. It talks about appeasement, it talks about occupation, and basically runs through what's going on in the events leading up to World War II with Hitler. Take a moment to read it, underline it, write it up, annotate it, whatever it is that you do in order to understand what's going on that worksheet. So here's the European response. Essentially, we're going to have a lot of non-aggression pacts that are going to be signed. You see the ones up there with France. And you've also got the German-Soviet Nazi-Soviet Pact. This one is extremely important. It's the reason why the Nazi-Soviet Pact is your underlined term. Germans are going to sign an agreement with Stalin. We saw this in the Stalin video, so it's a reoccurring theme for us at this point, but the Germans signed the Nazi-Soviet Pact saying they will not intervene in German affairs. So essentially, non-aggression pact. We're not going to bother you, you go about your affairs, we won't stick our nose into your business. And that's all because they had a secret agreement to split up Poland. They knew that Germany was going to invade Poland, and they were going to split it up once Germany invaded it, and Russia was going to take back, the Soviet Union at this point, was going to take back part of Russia, part of Poland, because remember, that had been their territory after the Congress of Vienna. And so in September of 1939, when Germany invades Poland, this is what is known as the official start of World War II. Never mind that if you watch the Crash Course video, John Green goes on this philosophical, well, when did the war really start? It started in September 1939. You can invade, or when they invade Poland, you can debate, well, maybe it was really this or maybe it was really that, but the agreed upon term, the agreed upon start of the actual war was September 39 when Germany invades